Hello, everyone, and welcome to Elevate 21, the Spalding Ridge Digital Cloud Conference. My name is Emil Fernandez. I'm a partner with Spalding Ridge, and my background is I've been working with companies for the last 25 years to undergo various forms of business and finance transformation and implementing various applications and cloud solutions over that time. And I am joined today by Philip White. Philip is a director in our Coupa practice. Philip, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me. It's been a really exciting month, first month here at the organization. But in terms of my full background, I've been working in the procurement space and implementing or supporting the Coupa platform for about a decade. I've had a kind of unique experience where I've worked for Coupa. This is my second time working for one of their partners. I've been on the client side, and even the majority of my time was spent independently as a consultant, helping organizations, whether it's set it up or make sure it actually runs the way they want it to. Can't leave out that I'm Canadian, Jamaican parents, with a Nigerian wife and 2 US kids. So that 360 view applies to my personal life as well as the Coupa platform too.
Well, Philip, thanks for your background. And this recording may be viewed, in the next 2 weeks or in the next 2 years. So by the time somebody's watching this, you may have been a wily veteran with Spalding Ridge. So the internet is forever. So thanks for your background. So as Philip mentioned, he's a director in our Coupa practice. And, in keeping with our best in cloud theme, Coupa software, Coupa is our best in cloud solution for procure to pay, strategic sourcing, and business spend management. We're very proud to be a Coupa partner and excited to help our customers learn more about Coupa. But I guess, Philip, before we jump into Coupa, let's just talk about the procurement space in general. What you've seen in your years working with chief procurement officers, strategic sourcing, purchasing. What are some trends that you see? What are some challenges that organizations face, and what are they doing about it?
Yeah, I think it'd be impossible to have a conversation without mentioning the quarantine and pandemic that we've been through in the last year and a half. And
I haven't heard of it. What
no.
pandemic?
So, I think what this period has really done is accelerate what people have always wanted to do, and it's to be able to buy or shop the way you do at home, but at work. And for all of us, we had to because we were working from home. But we all talk about that Amazon-like experience. Many software platforms describe that experience of the software doing it. And I think that's where a lot of platforms started. But because we were having so many more disruptive events, whether it's climate change related or political instability, we need the systems to do more. So being able to access, fraud prevention or detection, the same way you would for LifeLock at home. Now these platforms are being built to do that. We pay everybody. We pay our friends. We pay our family members. We pay our bills through PayPal. Now the platform's making that possible in a corporate environment. So I think that's the biggest change is where there used to be a line between how we did things at home versus at work. The industry is trying to make it possible to be effective no matter where you are.
That's interesting. So that's interesting. I can understand, obviously everyone's familiar with the Amazon-like experience. And, as an employee, I would imagine if I'm, a purchasing agent at a company, responsible for purchasing IT equipment or any other, thing I need to buy for the company, that Amazon experience is great. But what about at the executive level? Like, what is it, what does it enable a CFO or other executive, chief procurement officer, for example, to have this kind of visibility and spend management? And then how does Coupa, enable companies to make that happen?
Yeah, well, I mean, for executives, there's always that internal rigor. So you're doing your research to determine internally what would be the best fit for us. Looking at Gartner, Forrester, Spend Matters, those major sources of procurement information, Coupa's been in that leading indicator, like a leading solution, that top right of the Magic Quadrant space for about a half decade. When you look outside your organization, I think the thing about Coupa is the cross section of logos that they've landed. You see everything. You know, there's Fortune 100, you have the unicorn startups, you have nonprofits, you have foreign brands on pretty much every continent. You know, obviously there's levels to this. You know, there's entry level procurement maturity, and then there's enterprise level, you know, global strategic spend. But regardless of where an executive's organization is in their development, you can pretty much plug this software in and it'll take you as far as you need to go. And I think that the market has demonstrated that's the case. You know, I think for executives as well, the time has come where there's no more excuses for not being on top of this. You know, didn't see a '08 crash coming. Okay, we understand that was unanticipated. Your supply base wasn't diversified enough, and then a tsunami, an earthquake, you know, a flood that took out a lot of your key vendors. You weren't ready. Okay, that's understandable. But now, you know, there's that meme. You know, who drove your digital transformation? Was your CEO, your CIO, or COVID-19? Like, you have to be on top of this stuff now. There's no excuse. And I think, again, Coupa being able to flex up and down allows executives to catch up and become leaders.
Well, and you mentioned a few things like supply chain, obviously, and disruptions to the supply chain. I mean, we've seen it. You know, there's a chip shortage right now, which is affecting the automotive sector. There's a shortage of chlorine chemicals of all things because of a plant explosion in Louisiana. And so we've seen disruptions to the supply chain. So, you know, one of your points is obviously having a flexible system that helps you manage your supplier network and tap into a greater supplier network. That makes a lot of sense. But what about the visibility aspect of it? I mean, what does that, you know, do for an organization to be able to see where they're spending, how they're spending their dollars, and, you know, what are the opportunities for improvement there?
Yeah, I think, and to my point earlier, procurement immaturity is now a competitive disadvantage. You know, it's kind of like saying, why is IT security important? No one says that anymore. Why is diversity important? Nobody says that anymore. So, you know, today, not knowing what your employees are buying in real time is just as egregious as not knowing what your customers are buying in real time. You have to know. And, you know, specifically, there's some really cool stuff that a few different platforms can do, but I could speak to, you know, one cool thing like an insight that Coupa has is a kind of a predictive indicator, and it shows you a variety of topics. Kind of a favorite of mine is you can take a look at expense reports that employees have filed. And if you see a merchant showing up over and over and over again, maybe you should negotiate a contract and get them on a PO. A former client of mine, they had their employees, or they found their employees were expensing Amazon Prime to their house so they could ship their stuff home. That shot up during quarantine, of course. And, you know, Amazon Prime business is like $10,000. Just get it done. You know, so these are the kind of things where seeing what your employees are spending their money on, you can get your hands around it very quickly and save a lot and get ahead of that spend.
And I know earlier you kind of glossed over it quickly, but you mentioned sort of digital payments, and, you know, what is that doing to, I mean, to business? Obviously the age old, you know, get the invoice from the vendor, trying to match it up with something, and then cut a paper check and send it out in the mail. I mean, that sounds kind of archaic now,
Yeah.
but what, you know, having digital payments, what does that do for an organization?
Yeah, I think it just increases your supply base. You know, a lot of times, you know, we have kind of conflicting statements or conflicting approaches to things. You know, we might have a supplier diversity program, but we're asking our small, you know, mom and pop suppliers to wait 90 days to get paid. When you have when you allow payments to be, or, you know, even another example is wires. You know, wires are a very expensive, slow process. When you have a digital payment process that a supplier can plug into, they already use elsewhere, again, it reduces that lift for both sides of the equation. And again, gives you that real-time visibility into how much you're releasing. You know, there's a lot of solutions to the market that allow you to that allow suppliers to elect how much they want to discount their payments. So if they have an invoice for $10,000 due at the end of the month, they can say, I can take a 2% discount on that 8 days from now, or a 3% discount, 5 days from now or 10 days from now. So they can kind of play with those numbers. And again, that payment space, closing that loop, it probably drives Treasury crazy, but it's really powerful for the procurement process to, again, increase that relationship you have with your vendor base.
I can tell you as a vendor, right? So we have a lot of clients, and I know which clients run Coupa because they do take advantage of those early payment discounts. And if we have, net 30 terms, but there's a 1% discount if you pay before then, we get those payments on the 29th day. And all the Coupa customers who pay us take advantage of that, and they're on top of it. So I can tell you from the vendor side, it definitely happens. So Philip, talking about Coupa as part of an overall, cloud strategy, I'm curious to understand how Coupa fits in. We have clients who work with us with DocuSign, Salesforce, Anaplan, obviously, and they may have other enterprise systems. So how does Coupa either, does it compete with all those solutions, or does it complement them? And how does it fit in with a larger, digital transformation strategy?
Yeah, I think that the point strategy is kind of like the key term there. Strategic spend, strategic sourcing is where procurement wants to be, and Coupa brings you there within that practice itself. But in terms of your entire IT architecture, a great example is budgeting. We build our budgets in Anaplan or another platform, but you can feed those directly into Coupa and track your spend day by day to see what's been committed and actually consumed. With DocuSign, we spend our time, legal and sourcing within their time executing these agreements. Those can integrate very seamlessly into Coupa, and you can track the spend against them to see how close are we to renewal, how close are we to our minimum spend requirements. Are the pricing that we're receiving on the invoicing side actually aligned with the contract we negotiated? There's a variety of different ways we can describe it, but I think we talk about strategy and being strategic. Coupa allows all their platforms to get visibility day by day on what they set out to do in the first place.
Yeah, that's good. And I would even add, you mentioned that you can build a budget in Anaplan, feed it into Coupa, but then there's also the reverse, right? You can feed the spending data back into Anaplan and have the thing update in real time, so you know what how you're progressing against your plan. So that's great. Obviously, Coupa sounds like a wonderful solution, and sounds like it solves a lot of the challenges that organizations are facing these days. But you've been part of a lot of implementations. What could go wrong, right? What could possibly go wrong? Like, what are some of the common pitfalls that you see clients or see companies make, and how do you avoid them?
Yeah, I think, again, it's very easy to consider some activities as spend management or spend under management or strategic. The most common one I see is getting caught up in approvals. And I always compare it to a parent with a child in the candy store, and they're on the floor crying. They want the candy, and it's like, you lost this battle when you walked in the door and not told them not to touch anything. Like this, once that request is made,
says the guy with 2 kids, by the way.
Exactly. Anyway, I circled the parking lot a couple times before you go in. So so that's one side of it, where you have no anticipation of what's going to come, no foresight on the spend. On the other end, you get like incredibly complex workflows where to spend $1,000, you have 6 people touching it, and are you really adding value to an approval process if you approve 99% of the time, right? So that's one area where people can get bogged down, trying to make sure everybody can see it. This FOMO is real, and you got to avoid that. And I think the other piece that's not even systems based is really people. You would never purchase or subscribe to DocuSign without a legal department, or Anaplan without FP&A, or Salesforce without a sales department, right? But we find a lot of cases where there aren't procurement people in the organization when the procurement platform is purchased. And without that kind of thinking, that kind of DNA being kind of fed into the implementation, you can find decisions are made that cater to the needs of groups, but the group that owns it, right? So you'll see, heavy accounting requirements on the front end, heavy receiving requirements at the inventory phase. You know, a lot of things that don't necessarily support or things that could be accomplished, but approached differently if you had somebody with procurement experience in there. So those are the two that I would highlight.
Yeah, no, and I think that I think that's common. There's a lot of things that you mentioned are probably common across many of our cloud solutions. You want to have somebody. We always talk about having the executive viewpoint, kind of the management viewpoint, and then like the frontline viewpoint, right? Having the sort of three levels of opinions and input into the process, because we've learned things. The executives think there's probably a cartoon like this, how the executives think it works,
Yeah,
how the managers think it works, and how the process actually works. And so
exactly.
you have to get all perspectives to make sure that you have a complete picture. That's good stuff. So I guess just in closing, we have a lot of, clients and prospects who might watch this video thinking about, hey, should I be thinking about, a transformation around procurement? And I mean, what are the maturity signs? Like what are some signs that an organization is ready to tackle, a revamp of their procurement system? And maybe even what are some signs that maybe they're not ready?
You know, I think just to let people sigh or relax a little bit, not to get too theoretical, procurement is definitely one of the newer internal functions. If you look at the history of most companies, organizations, and business intelligence, taking a strategic look at spend, wasn't really a thing until maybe the turn of the century. And even then, how effective could you do it without all the cloud data that we have access to today? So it's okay if this is lagging the other functions in your company. That said, our suppliers always calling you to find out when their invoice will be paid. Do they know? Can they see that? Every time you have to renew a contract with a vendor, are you scrambling to get yourself organized and try to renegotiate the price? And I think one of those, in terms of levels, day to day, like when you buy the same things, paying the same vendors monthly, but you have to go through the same long process every single time. That's just a sign that, this could be a lot better. It doesn't have to be like this. That's foundational stuff. For executives, when we look at your dashboards and reports, how long does it take for the data to show you who your key suppliers are, or where you're spending your money? What are the key commodities you spend your money on? How long does that take? Is it hard? Can you do that with a few clicks? Do you have any data in place to help anticipate things that might happen in the future? Yes or no? And I think the biggest one is, do you participate in the procurement process? What the executive thinks and how it really is. Are you in there? And if so, is it easy? I bring this up every time I talk to a client, and we were implementing an expense solution, and the day before go live, the CEO grabbed his receipt, took his phone, took a picture of it. It was like, everyone's going to do this. And once that was done, everybody had to do it, right? Because he was participating, he was involved in it. So I think if you can answer those three questions, don't give you the right kind of answers, it's probably time to start looking at a transformation and maybe a solution too.
Yeah, I'd add a couple others too. Just, if you push out departmental budgets, how close do they get? Do people end up, you build these wonderful plans, but the best laid plans of mice and men, somebody once said, they get pushed out to the departments, and then the spending comes in